Hello and welcome to my latest video. So, on eBay, I managed to pick up the cheapest Dinky Zero you could find. Yes, it does only have two parts. No screw, right, no motor, no innards, no canopy, no aerial, no propeller, and the paintwork scratched. The Dinky A6M5 was made between 1975 and 1979. Now I haven't seen the Dinky Thunderbolt, but this, you may notice, follows a different format for the castings on previous Dinky aeroplanes, whereby the fuselage and the upper surface of the wings would be, say, one casting, and then the lower surface of the wings would be another casting, and they haven't done that with this. In this one, the fuselage is one casting, and then the wings are actually made up of two parts which sandwich in the undercarriage. So as you can see here, there is a switch hole for a switch, which we don't have. So we're going to have to be a bit imaginative on how we fix that. So as you can see, the undercarriage is there. And there you go, A6M50Zen, made in England. And we don't have a switch, but we'll get round that, don't worry. Now this aircraft doesn't seem to use springs to hold the undercarriage up or down. What it seems to rely on is the pressure of the two wing halves, allowing the wheels to move into their up and down positions and holding them there. And as you can see, the lower half of the wing is not really fitting the upper half of the wing. So we need to look into that. I don't know if that's the case the undercarriage is doing that, or there's some other issue. Now I'm just showing you, if you've never seen the Dinky Zero up close, or in bits, or broken, this gives you an idea of how the thing's constructed. You can see there's two rivets holding the main wing sections together. They're very shallow, and I'm not going to drill them out because I think that's going to cause a real problem getting the whole thing reassembled. Now if you're not familiar with the Dinky Zero, it would have had an electric motor in the front, there'd be a battery behind, which is all missing. However, we have sourced the propeller, which is in a very realistic Japanese World War II colour scheme of red. Now obviously we're missing a motor, but I have another motor. Now, I know of a source for these motors, so if you're missing them, I know where you can get more. And they're the right motor, they're not bodged out of something else, they're made for Dinky, and there is a means of obtaining them from an interesting source, and I will tell you that in the next aircraft restoration, because that's going to be an ME109, which is also missing its motor. So for a moment, just imagine that I've managed to source a low use motor which doesn't quite fit the aeroplane, because you see this little pin is holding the engine, you know, it lines up with that dent, but that hole, I should say the pin, is so big it needs to penetrate into the motor quite a distance. I think it would actually stop it turning. So anyway, what we're going to do first is just make sure this motor, which is going to be at least 40 years old, is actually working. So we'll just do a quick test with a multimeter. So on these motors, say about 100 degrees, 180 degrees of the turn of the motor is open circuit on purpose, and the rest of it should generate some sort of resistance, which this is doing. So I think we can assume this motor is working. Because the little wire brushes in these motors are quite fragile, you don't want to necessarily be opening the motor up. But I think we'll be okay with this one. Now the model should use, I think, an N-type battery, but I found that an AA battery will actually fit in the battery compartment and make contact with the back of the motor, sort of basically leaving it always on, so you don't need a switch. And if you rely on the flick position of the motor, effectively that does turn it off. So that's what we're going to do. However, I found that when it had it all assembled, it was not running, if you see what I mean. You could feel it wanting to, but it wasn't quite going for it. So I'll show you how I got that going without opening the motor. So what we're going to do is you're going to use some switch cleaner and lubricant spray. And I'd actually bought this can already to repair an amplifier, a Sony amplifier I got from the 90s. And this actually works wonders, this stuff. So what we're going to do, or should I say have done, is I've sprayed this stuff into the motor and allowed it to dry. And what it'll do is it'll clean the commutator up a bit. And this is literally first go. It's running, and it's actually quite a good motor. It's actually very quiet. The motor that's on the Spitfire, which we've done previously, that's really noisy, and this thing runs a treat. So if we ever want to turn the motor off, we just literally stall it, and that's it switched off. Now, as you can see, the pin is stopping the motor from lining up properly, so we'll probably remove that. Yes, I suppose not many people can say they've got an engine going on a Mitsubishi Zero now. There you go, that's another achievement. Now, I'm not doing a very good job of showing this here with the ruler, but basically the wings are bent. They've got like the wing tips kind of bend down, as though somebody's used this aircraft to lever something open, or open, I don't know what's happened to it, but both wing tips kind of point down, and they're not supposed to do that. There should be more or less a straight line. So we're going to have to straighten the wing out. Now I'm just giving you a close-up of that pin that needs to be removed to let the motor sit inside, because as it stands you can't put the two halves of the aircraft together because it makes the engine stand proud out of centre. So we'll have to do something about that. Okay, so we've come out to the shed and we're going to have a go at bending the wings back into shape. And to do this, we're going to use a heat gun, because if you just bend the die-cast metal, there's always the risk it might crack, or it might crack after a while, which has happened to me. I've bent a car ages ago back into shape, and after a week or so, a crack appeared on it. So we're going to use heat, and this definitely does work. And the handy thing about using the heat gun as well is it's not even hot enough to singe the stickers. It's enough to burn you, but it's not hot enough to actually do any damage to the model. So we're just warming the wing up. It's a very cold day in the shed. This is on the edge of my wood pile. I put my gloves on because I nearly did burn myself. And I'm just going to give this a gentle bend with my fingers. And occasionally I'll get a spark fly through the air gun from dust from the wood pile. There you go. It looks like I'm bending it a lot, but it's actually the gloves that are flexing, not the wing. If I have to have a word for that. I don't know if you can see that now. That's actually straightened it out. So that's not too bad, is it? It's also impossible to focus the camera when you're wearing the gloves. So you see the other wing now's got this kink in it, so we're going to do the other wing. I'll just speed it up slightly. So basically I'm just doing this in the shed so that I don't burn the floor or anything like that, or melt any of the laminate. And so basically there we go, we're just getting the wings sorted out there. And now what I'm going to do here, I'm just warming up the very centre of the aeroplane, and what I'm going to have a go at doing is reducing the dihedral of the wings, and this might actually make the two wing sections tighter together, because I think it's been bent up slightly anyway. So I'm just giving it a very gentle press. It's just the gloves moving, not the wing, and believe it or not, it's actually fixed it. So now the wing, I'll just try to turn it off with these thick gloves. So the two wing halves now are actually tight on each other. I have to try and take a glove off and focus the camera now, and not touch it because it's quite hot. So hopefully I'll turn it over in a sec. There you go. Now can you see the lower wing half now is in contact with the wing, so we've now solved that problem as well. So job's a good one. Okay, so back inside in the warm, and now we're going to turn attention back to the fuselage. And what I've done is I gave the little pin a tap. I was going to use the Dremel tool to grind it down, but I just figured I'll just give it a tap with a screwdriver and it snapped off. So that's quite handy. I'll just point it out for you just in case you're not quite sure which bit I'm talking about. I'm doing this through the camera, so that's why I'm pointing in all directions like Captain Scarlet. There you go. So that'll enable the motor to sit in the engine bay, so to speak, and we can get this thing assembled. So I'll just pop the motor in, which, as you remember from the Spitfire video, the motor has an offset shaft. So now you can see the motor's down the centre of the engine cowling. Oh, come on, focus. How hard can it be to make a camera in the 21st century? Anyway, so now you can see with the battery in place. Now this battery is too long, because realistically there should be a switch in between the battery and the motor, but it just so happened that this AA battery fits, so I didn't have to make anything or do any creative whittling of plastic. So we can put the propeller on, and now we can just hook the fuselage to the wings. We'll just hold it because we haven't got a screw at the moment. There you go, now the whole thing goes together in one piece. And we're starting to get towards our finished article now. Let's give it a quick go. Obviously, because I've cut the pin now, the earth's not so good, so what I'll do with this is what I did with the Spitfire, where I'll put an earth lead in from the motor to the casing as well. But there you go. So basically all we need to do now is replace the canopy and the aerial and a paint job, and we've got ourselves a restored Mitsubishi Zero Zen from Dinky. So we'll see you in part 2, which will be coming shortly. Thank you for watching.